Senator Jake Garn of Utah is perhaps best known for his journey aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery in 1985. As a payload specialist conducting medical research, Garn was the perfect candidate to become the first senator in space.
It's unusual at the time when you had a senator who had been both a Navy and an Air Force pilot and had more than 10,000 hours of military flying experience. So I was qualified.
Edwin Jacob Garn was born in Richfield, Utah in 1932. The son of a man who held the first ever pilot's license issued in Utah, Garn's interest in aviation began at his father's side.
Well, he was just such a great example to me. He was my hero. So even if the Korean War hadn't been going on, I have to be like Daddy and be a pilot. The airplane I remember he taught me how to fly in was a 1934 Fairchild 24. Single engine fabric tail dragger. And all my life I will still remember flying that airplane with Daddy.
As a graduate of the University of Utah, the senior Garn had some important advice for young Jake when it came time to pick a college.
He said, "Son, you can go to any college you want, but the only place I'll pay your tuition is at the University of Utah."
But Garn didn't need his father's help with tuition. Instead, he earned a full scholarship from the United States Navy.
Got my Navy wings in Corpus Christi, Texas, and then was assigned to Whidbey Island, Washington, Oak Harbor, and eventually stationed in Iwakuni, Japan. In fact, when I was in the Senate, I was meeting with Deng Xiaoping in China, and he said, "Have you ever been to China before?" And I said, "Well, Mr. Prime Minister, if you'd ever like a tour of your East Coast, I'd be happy to take you." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I spied on you from Tsingtao down to Hainan Island. I know every square inch of the East Coast of China."
Garn flew surveillance flights over China and the Far East in a Martin Marlin P-5M, a flying boat.
I did it for 3 years without landing on a runway, so I'll never forget when I first came back and transferred to the Utah Air National Guard, how narrow a runway looked.
Leaving the Navy as a colonel, Garn returned to Utah and approached the Air National Guard in Salt Lake City.
The Air National Guard was advertising for pilots, and I went out to be interviewed, and they said, "Yes, we need pilots, but you're Navy." And I said, "I understand, but I don't think airplanes fly differently in the Navy or the Air Force." And so I transferred from the Navy to the Utah Air National Guard.
In the National Guard, Garn flew a variety of aircraft, including F-86 fighters and large cargo planes. His transition to politics began when he easily won a post on the Salt Lake City Commission.
I was city commissioner for one term and decided, well, if I really want to make some change, I need to be mayor. I didn't have any intentions of going beyond being mayor. But when Senator Bennett announced that he wasn't going to run for re-election, a number of people said, "We need somebody in Washington and Congress with practical experience." And so I was really encouraged by my fellow mayors across the country to run for the Senate. So my political career was more of an accident than a plan.
With his background in aviation and a degree in banking and finance, Garn served on many important Senate committees, including the one overseeing NASA's budget. In 1984, NASA offered Senator Garn the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to fly on the Space Shuttle Discovery as a payload specialist. Even though he had more flying time than all but one other astronaut, Garn went through astronaut training with his NASA colleagues.
So I went through all the basic stuff from the very beginning, and I just thought it was not right, because I was a senator, that I wouldn't do all the training that every other astronaut had ever done. Well, it's almost impossible to describe, but I'll never forget laying on my back on the countdown, 10, 9, 8, 6, 7, and so on, and the main engine at night at 6.8 seconds prior to launch. And I was all wired because I was the first human guinea pig in space. Blood pressure monitors and everything, had all these things on my bald head. But for almost 7 minutes, you got about almost 7 Gs. So you're really being pushed back into your seat.
Garn spent a total of 7 days and 109 orbits in space, and upon his return was promoted to the rank of Brigadier General. The experience that he brought back to Earth was invaluable, both to NASA and to his work in the Senate.
Well, the benefit of not just my space flight, but being a military pilot for 24 years, and being on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, when certain questions would be asked, I could always say, may I tell you how it really works? The practical experience of being a military pilot for 24 years, but both Navy and Air Force, was invaluable to me on defense appropriation, to have that real-world practical experience.
Jake Garn retired in 1992, following a distinguished 18-year career in the Senate. His contributions to the nation and to aviation were invaluable. In honor of Senator Garn's legacy, NASA renamed its primary astronaut training facility after him. It was a fitting tribute to a man who had always reached for the skies.